Hello, I'm John.
And I'm Kenny from Media Molecule. In this tips special, we're going to talk about the thermometer, and how to stop your level from overheating before you've completed it.
On the left of your screen, at all times in create mode, is the thermometer. This indicator will rise as more gadgets and gizmos are built into your level. If you build too much, it will overheat and prevent you from adding any more.
Believe it or not, but the thermometer isn't there because we're cruel and wish to limit or stifle creativity. It's there because that's the threshold beyond which the game would become unplayable if anything else were to be added. Obviously, we want to avoid hitting that limit, and luckily there are lots of clever ways to keep the thermometer's level down, so these tips are definitely worth keeping in mind whilst building a level.
Remember, it's not a race to the top. You don't need to fill the thermometer to make a good level, and in many cases, if your level is overheating, it may actually be worth splitting it into 2 levels.
Contrary to popular opinion, vertices is not a Greek god. Vertices are, essentially, the corner points of a shape. The more corners in a shape, the more costly it is in the thermometer. So lesson 1 is to keep the number of corners down, way down.
A shape may look simple, but a quick check with the corner editing tool will reveal any unnecessary corners which you can safely delete. This pruning of corners is especially important for objects which you'll be making multiple copies of, as each copy reproduces all those unnecessary corners.
Copied objects use up a lot less thermometer than unique objects. Copies can be resized, flipped or glued to other items and only become more expensive if you then actually edit them in some way.
You can use this to your advantage by building different objects from identical component parts. For instance, you can make multiple trees from separate trunks, branches, leaves, etc. by putting them together in slightly different ways to create unique, pretty items of scenery.
Curved objects contain many vertices, so try to avoid them. Perfect circles, however, contain no vertices at all, so are actually the cheapest shape to use. Perfect circles can only be created by the circle tool. Use these whenever possible. If you cut into a circle or edit it, it creates 100 squillion vertices and turns a low-cost object into a very expensive one. A bit like a pint of milk from Harrods. Similarly, when using dark matter to hang objects up, use small triangles of it and glue it on the side, as cutting into the object will create yet more of the evil vertices.
Anything in your level that you don't need to move should be glued down. Things which are glued down don't have any associated complex physics calculations and therefore cost far, far less. Similarly, dark matter is the lowest cost material to use because its floating properties mean the game treats it as though it is glued down. Using dark matter for all your switch mechanisms can save you a lot of precious thermometer juice.
Once you've made some objects, you're going to want to decorate them to make your level look all pretty like. Try to use as small a selection of materials and stickers as possible. The more additional materials are added, the higher the thermometer will go. Pick a theme for a level and use 5 or so materials to achieve this aesthetic.
Avoid placing too many stickers. This is especially important if you're going to copy and paste a stickered shape multiple times. You might not remember how many stickers are on that shape, and Captain Thermometer will soon start screaming at you, "There she blows!"
Too many of one type of switch will cause thermometer meltdown. So, when adding switches, try to use a balanced selection. Logic gate mechanisms can take up a lot of space too, so make them from the minimal amount of materials and switches as possible. And you remember what we said about using dark matter, right? It's the cheapest material to use because it doesn't have any physical properties, remember?
Emitters can be a real resource hog. They're evil. When you place an emitter in a level, the game will predict how many items the emitter will emit. For example, placing just one innocent little emitter that is set to emit 100 flaming cats every second will cost just as much thermometer as actually placing 100 flaming cats in your level. Make sure you are only emitting quite simple objects. And bring the settings down to the bare minimum, adjusting the amount of objects emitted at once, how long they live for, and the frequency can make a really huge impact. If you only need something to be emitted 10 times, then set it to 10 instead of the default of infinite. It is entirely possible to fill up the thermometer with just one emitter and a complex object, so be warned.
Lights set to normal will be much cheaper than if you set them to, say, foggy. Don't put too many of them on the screen at once either, or the frame rate is likely to plummet. Phew, that's quite a lot of things to keep in mind. I'll bet your internal thermometer is about to explode.